Renal failure in diabetes with Dr. Yalini Balakumar. Dr. Yalini Balakumar is a consultant endocrinologist, Barts Hospital NHS Trust. She specializes in endocrinology and metabolic medicine. Before we go into the questions, I just wanted to introduce you about the talk show. Meet Menaca talk show was launched with a mission to inspire 1 million hearts and lives. It features experts in their respective fields and real people sharing real stories to create a positive social change. What we have come to realize is each episode is a dose of information mixed with inspiration, creating a positive impact. Coming back to the topic, why are we talking about this particular topic? It is estimated that 415 million people are living with diabetes in the world. And if you roughly estimate, it's around 1 in 11 people. And 46% of people with diabetes are undiagnosed. And the figure is even alarmingly expected to rise to 642 million people living in the diabetes worldwide by 2040. I didn't know this particular information, what I'm going to share, because obviously whenever we have a guest speaker, I go and see and seek and try to learn at least a bit about that topic. Apparently, 30% of patients with type 1 and 10 to 40% of type 2 people, diabetics, eventually will suffer from kidney failure. It is an important topic, and it is even a bit more important topic for our general audience who we get. I can't wait to hear Dr. Yalini Balakumar come and speak about it. Firstly, a very warm welcome to you, Dr. Yalini.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you for giving this opportunity to share my knowledge and experience with a wider audience. I'm very grateful for you to give this opportunity.
Thank you. It's a privilege to have you. Why do people get diabetes? What makes them susceptible to getting it? And why is diabetes particularly high Asian people or South Asian people?
That's an interesting question, isn't it? So why do people get diabetes? That is one of the things. In fact, actually, there is a group of people are more susceptible to get diabetes, and particularly, as we quite correctly said, ethnic group, Asians, Southeast Asians in particular, and also people who have a family history have a higher chance to get diabetes, and possibly that the disease is going through the genes, so that the gene related. And people who are overweight, people who are sort of more than they should be, are very susceptible to get diabetes. And also people who live a sedentary lifestyle, so sort of a lack of exercise, and those are sort of a high risk of developing diabetes. Age, when you get old, can't help that, you get diabetes. So basically, if you just put them into sort of two categories, which are the modifiable risk factors and which cannot be modifiable. You can't change your family, you can't change your ethnicity, you can't stop getting aging. So we can't stop that part, which is not modifiable. However, there's a great opportunity to look into the disease risk factors which are modifiable, which is weight and exercise. So that's sort of the two things actually we are targeting as a nationwide and also worldwide. Now, that is the risk factor. Now, the question is, why do they get it? Okay, you are overweight, you are doing not much exercise, and why do you are getting diabetes? And that's sort of a big thing. So to sort of understand this, I like to take you through what's actually happening physiology, what's happening to us. And then that will help us to understand why the diabetes is different from the normal people. So I'm sure you're all aware, when we have our food, particularly carbohydrate, that is sort of digested in the digestive system, get absorbed into glucose. That glucose is then taken into our circulation and travel all into the body. And every cell, every organ need a blood supply, and that blood supply gives to that organ and the cell the glucose, oxygen, the nutrients. And what happens in diabetes? This glucose, which is going into the circulation, move out of the circulation, around the cell and into the cell. And when the glucose go into the cell, I'm making a bit more simplicity because there's much more science there, because I think the audience, most of them are, I believe, the general public. So I'm not going to talk about the science and all the jargons, but what I would like you to understand that the glucose, which is just sitting from the blood, going out of the blood, around the cell, it has to enter into the cell. But two, for the glucose to get into the cell, there is a person who has to open the gate. And that person, in simplistic terms, is called insulin. I'm sure all of you heard about insulin, particularly the diabetic patient. So to understand that the glucose to enter into the cell, you need insulin. That's the fundamental thing everyone should understand. The reason behind that is over and over again, sometimes we come to this sort of a conflict with patients. I don't want insulin. When it's needed, you need that because no one can open the gate. Only insulin can open the gate. So next question you're asking, so what's the problem in diabetes? What's the insulin doing? The insulin in the vast majority of the type 2 diabetes patient is ineffective. We call in scientific term resistance, but actually in layman term, what I could explain, insulin is weak. So if someone wants to open the gate for someone to enter, the gatekeeper is weak. What happens? You need more people, more insulin, more gatekeepers to come and open the gate. And that's what your body does. So the diabetic patient with insulin resistance, the insulin is weak, so more insulin needed to open the gate. So if you need more insulin, who has to do the job? The pancreas. Now I'm taking you to the pancreas. Pancreas is the organ which secretes the insulin. So what happens in the pancreas? The pancreas now has to secrete more insulin because your body needs more insulin. So when the pancreas trying to do that, it's more work because the demand is high. So pancreas trying to work so hard to produce the excess insulin. On that process, it fails. So when you don't have enough insulin coming from the pancreas, when you don't have enough sort of a supply of insulin to compensate the excess demand imposed by the insulin resistance or the weak insulin, the diabetes manifests. So it is the balance between supply and demand. The supply is not sufficient to meet the demand, so the blood sugars goes up. The blood sugars goes up, that's the diabetes. So that's essentially to understand. And then the reason I'm telling that, perhaps later on you would understand what we can do. I'm sure the next question you will ask, so why insulin resistance? What's this insulin is resistance? What's actually happening? Yes, the insulin resistance, there are so many causes. Essentially modifiable, not modifiable again. When you become older, you can get more insulin resistance. When you become sort of a family history, there are some gene attached. But the one, again, coming back to the modifiable risk factors, the obesity. When you are overweight, the insulin is not working well. Again, I don't want to go to the actual mechanistic why. The fat cells, which are, when we are overweight, the little fat cells, they're not benign. They are sort of secreting a lot of toxins. I'm sure in the COVID time, we heard about how obese people are susceptible to COVID and all these, cytochrome, sort of a storm and those things. So the fat cells secrete a lot of toxins, and maybe that is damaging. Again, I'm not going to postulate. I'm again talking to wider audience who are general public. But then you can still understand that may be the reason. But what we could do, there's a strong link between obesity and insulin resistance. And on the other word, when you lose weight, the insulin becomes stronger. So insulin resistance gets better. So weaker insulin becomes stronger when you lose weight. So fundamentally, if you want to tackle the insulin resistance, the answer is actually having the right ideal weight, which is between 20 to 25 BMI. I'm sure you all have heard about body mass index. That is 20 to 25. You keep that weight, very sort of likely you are making your pancreas much more stronger. The other modifiable risk factor which I mentioned is exercise. When you exercise, actually your insulin starts working stronger. For surprise maybe some people, but particularly not just the exercise, actually not just running and cardio, but doing some resistance exercises, improving your muscle power, improving your skeletal muscles, sort of skeletal muscle, which will actually improve the insulin resistance too. So these are the two modifiable factors which we can make an impact to actually improve insulin resistance and then actually help with the diabetes.
Thank you, Dr. Yalini. One important question I wanted to ask, why is it so high in South Asian or Asian population?
I think it's just more genetic, sadly, and also our food. I guess that we sort of eat a bit more than we need, the carbohydrate portions, and contrary to the popular sort of understanding, the carbohydrate can convert it to fat if you eat excessively, and then the vast majority, I wouldn't say a lot of people, the vast majority of our patients who become diabetic are actually centrally obese. So they have the so-called fat cells, which is possibly secreting toxins or whichever way is damaging the insulin and making it weaker. So I would say a combination of genetic as well as the lifestyle which the Asians have, which is eating excess carbohydrate. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Yalini. I have no excuse to be overweight because week after week, someone or the other is coming and telling being overweight is bad. Thank you so much. Yes, now we understand why people get diabetes, but why do people get complications?
Okay, so if you actually look into again, I mentioned that when you have a carbohydrate food, it is absorbed into glucose and it's going into all over your body by this little sort of a pipe, which is the blood vessels, is taking into all over the body. Then what happens when diabetes people, because the glucose can't enter into the cell, it's all accumulate on the pipes. So your pipes which are taking your blood to everywhere is having excess glucose because it cannot go into the cell. And this pipe, particularly the small pipes, so large, imagine that you have a sort of big tank on the loft and it takes all your water into various places. Likewise, this blood vessel is taking all your blood into various places. But when it goes to the smaller vessel, the glucose can actually have some oxidative damage to the small vessel wall and can get clogged up. And in addition to the glucose, I'm sure you heard diabetes can have high blood pressure, so that it can go hand in hand. So the blood pressure, the pressure exerting on the blood vessels, along with some people have a higher cholesterol. So all those things are going to impact on the microcirculation, the small vessels, and it can get clogged up. When it's clogged up, you don't get blood supply. When you don't get blood supply, no glucose, no oxygen, no nutrient, so cells has to weak and die. And that's how the complications come. And some cells are more susceptible than others, but as a whole, the microvascular circulation is clogged up, and that's why you get complications.
Sure. Thank you so much. So before we go into the kidney disease itself, can you tell me what is the function of kidneys and what happens when it fails?
Okay, so kidneys, as you all heard about, is one of the important organ in our body. It looks like exactly kidney beans. I'm sure you all would have had kidney beans. And if you sort of zoom it a bit bigger, coming to the fifth size, and that's your kidneys. It sits on the either side of our flank, our back, and it does an incredible job. And what kidney does, it actually sort of gets rid of all the toxin from our body. So it filters the blood and take the bad things out of you. And if you actually think in a day, your kidney filters around 180 liters. Imagine a smaller tank of water, and that's how the kidney works. And the kidneys are made up of small functional units called nephrons, and the job of them is to just filter and get rid of the bad stuff. And then that's how we maintain a non-toxic environment. I'm sure you heard about ammonia, urea, and some acids, and those sort of bad stuffs are got to kidney just sort of get rid of that. And it's also maintain what we call acid-base electrolyte fluid balance, the homeostasis, the body. To keep our body, we need the right amount of fluid, right amount of acids, right amount of electrolyte. That sort of a balance is also essentially the kidney does. And it has some other functions. It has some endocrine functions. It has sort of involved with vitamin D metabolism, so the bone health is important. When the kidney problem happens, the bone gets affected, and it also sort of help with the production of red blood cells, erythropoietin, so we secrete one of the nice sort of a hormone which helps with the production of red blood cells. So when kidney fails, people get anemia, and then people feel a bit, oh my God, I'm a bit tired. So bone disease because of the vitamin D related issues, and then anemia causes tiredness, and then you're not sort of getting rid of the acid, so you get acidosis, and people are sort of breathless because acidosis. In the same way, the fluid balance is maintained by kidneys, so you can't get rid of the fluid, so you're accumulating fluid, which causes sort of a, in some respect, sort of a heart failure, but again, fluid overload. So the functions of the kidneys get affected, and as a consequence, when you have a kidney failure, which means the nephrons are gone and the kidney is not working, those sort of symptoms come up. Essentially, the ones is because you are not getting rid of the ammonia, urea, the toxins, the patients feel very tired, very nauseous, lack of appetite, the mood goes off. So they are very weak because the toxins are staying in the body. And also, as I mentioned before, because the anemia, they feel tired, because the vitamin D and related others, the calcium absorptive problem, they can get metabolic bone disease. So they feel aches and pain. So essentially, a patient developing kidney is doing a wonderful job, incredible job, and then if we are sort of losing the kidney, all those jobs are gone. So we, at the end, most of the patients sort of end up going to transplant or renal dialysis, because you have to sort of give that function of the kidney, to perform by something else. And so it is, and I have to say that patients who are getting kidney failure during that process from kidney disease are developing during that time, they get heart problem too. And in fact, if a patient who is 65 years, who is having early kidney damage, and if you let this progress, before that patient end up with a kidney failure and dialysis, they die of heart failure. So that's important to understand. It's not just kidney. When the kidney goes, heart goes too, same time. And then the main mortality is actually heart failure and cardiac disease.
Thank you, Dr. Yalini. Yes, now we understand why people get diabetes, but why do people get complications?
Okay, so if you actually look into again, I mentioned that when you have a carbohydrate food, it is absorbed into glucose and it's going into all over your body by this little sort of a pipe, which is the blood vessels, is taking into all over the body. Then what happens when the diabetes people, because the glucose can't enter into the cell, it all accumulate on the pipes. So your pipes, which are taking your blood to everywhere, is having excess glucose because it cannot go into the cell. And this pipes, particularly the small pipes, so large, imagine that you have a sort of big tank on the loft and it takes all your water into various places. Likewise, this blood vessel is taking all your blood into various places. But when it goes to the smaller vessel, the glucose can actually have some oxidative damage to the small vessel wall and can get clogged up. And in addition to the glucose, I'm sure you heard diabetes can have high blood pressure, so that it can go hand in hand. So the blood pressure, the pressure exerting on the blood vessels, along with some people have a higher cholesterol. So all those things are going to impact on the microcirculation, the small vessels, and it can get clogged up. When it's clogged up, you don't get blood supply. When you don't get blood supply, no glucose, no oxygen, no nutrient, so cells has to weak and die. And that's how the complications come. And some cells are more susceptible than others, but as a whole, the microvascular circulation is clogged up, and that's why you get complications.
Thank you so much. It's so important to know what problems we are having to focus on how we can prevent it. I have looked at it superficially. You are the expert. So what is the incidence of how common is a renal failure in diabetes, and who are at risk and what they should look for?
Yeah, that's a good question. Around 40% of type 2 diabetes, I'm just focusing on type 2 diabetes, more actually type 1, because type 1 is a bit different. Around 40% of type 2 diabetes eventually get some sort of a chronic kidney disease. So it is a large number. The risk factors for getting kidney disease in diabetes is longer duration. If you have a diabetes for a longer time, then your likelihood of getting kidney problem is high. And also poorly controlled diabetes. If a diabetes is controlled quite badly, and that chances of getting kidney disease is high. And the third thing is hypertension. A lot of type 2 diabetes patients and type 1 will also develop hypertension in the process of kidney disease. And even before kidney disease develop, they can get hypertension. So those patients are quite at risk of getting into kidney failure. So I would say, and the other thing which we don't actually think much about is the weight itself. The obesity, particularly, BMI over 35, and I would say even BMI over 30, that's also at risk of developing kidney failure. So coming back to that, there are risk factors which might tell us I have to be a bit more careful, and then that will help us to understand that we need to seek some help, or we got to actually change our lifestyle so that we can stop having kidney disease.
Thank you, Dr. Yalini. Listening to you, it seems like a terrible condition to have because it affects many other things. So can you please tell us how we can stop diabetes from getting renal failure?
Yeah, okay. So like the diabetes, I just like you to sort of understand how the kidney disease get progressed. When, as I mentioned before, we have a longer the duration of diabetes, poor the control, hypertension and obesity. These sort of risk factors can actually contribute to the development of kidney disease. But then it doesn't mean that the patients can suddenly go into kidney failure. The life or the kidney gives enough time for us to act upon. So from the start of the kidney disease to the end stage renal failure is a process. It might take around 10 years for the patients to develop actually kidney failure. One of the important things you could do, you could argue that, first of all, to prevent kidney failure, I don't want to get diabetes in the first place. That is another big topic here, how we can avoid getting diabetes, particularly if you're carrying the gene, if you're carrying that ethnic related issues, how we can stop, that is lifestyle measures. But then once you get the diabetes, how can you actually stop getting kidney disease? Is to properly controlling the blood glucose and making sure your blood pressure is well controlled, and also making sure you attain the target weight, which is 22, 25 BMI. And these three factors itself will greatly improve the chances of you not developing actually kidney disease. The next question is, okay, I missed the opportunity, I became diabetes, I missed the opportunity that I actually now got kidney disease. What should I do? That is another thing. It's very important for us to understand that we can diagnose kidney related actually quite early. Yeah. So rather than waiting to things to escalate and leading into renal failure and dialysis, we can diagnose kidney disease early. And that's one of the important messages I like to pass to you. By regularly monitoring your blood glucose, particularly what we call a filtration, how the kidney is filtering, we call glomerular filtration rate. I don't want to go jargon, but it's just to understand, the GPs will know there is a test we do to see how the kidneys are filtrating. And also there's another test to see whether they are leaking any protein. So, as I mentioned before, the blood which comes through the kidneys, I mentioned about 180 liters, is filtered through that lovely blood vessel into one of the tubule. So what then happens that these small particles are the one filtering and going, but then the kidney damage, the big particle can leak. So structural kidney damage can lead into big particles leaking. One of the big particles is called albumin. So if we actually got early stages, if we got microalbumin leaking, then that tells us we got to do something now. Yeah, and that's another important thing. We have to understand that microalbumin excretion is a bad sort of a sign, and how we can diagnose that only way during the urine test. There's a message I like to tell to my audience, particularly for those diabetes. If your doctor asking for a urine test, don't ignore. Just go for the urine test, because that might save your life in 10 years' time, because it is the understanding of the importance of having this test is the one which actually will help us to stop these things getting worse. I would sort of expand that, but when you ask more questions, yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Yalini. Basically, you're saying is go for all the screening tests, I guess. So can you take diabetic renal failure early on, like diabetes? Because, diabetes, it's the same. Like you're saying, we have to go for a blood test early. For this, you're telling to go for a urine test early. So what are the screenings available, and what should a layman be aware of?
Yeah, yeah. And this is the one which I was alluding to. So doing a urine test detecting microalbumin tells us the kidney is damaged. So normally the microalbumin mean you can't detect that on the dipstick. I'm sure when you go to the hospital they can put a little dipstick and the GPs put it. You can't detect that on that. This is microalbumin. It can only detect if you actually send your urine to a lab. But that will tell us, as he quite correctly mentioned, that will tell us, alert us, it's a red flag. This is something not right. And that, if that persists, then you know that your kidney is damaged, particularly an at-risk group. And also the glomerular filtration rate can be measured by a blood test. So if the glomerular filtration rate is going down and you are leaking albumin, these two tests need to be done every year. So the most important message, if a GP asking you to go for a blood test, if a GP give a bit of a urine pot and asking you to bring your first pass urine, don't ignore that. That will actually alert you that is something not right and you got to do something now. So it's like a red flag and you can go into red alert and think, okay, I missed the opportunity. I would have stopped getting diabetes. I would have stopped getting, complications. Now this happened. How can I stop getting renal failure? How can I stop getting end-stage renal failure? How can I stop getting dialysis, renal transplant, or even death, which I was talking about? And that is a red alert. Once that happened, you've got to now, at least if you haven't done anything so far, now you have to do. So there's an opportunity your kidney giving you to do something now. So which means if you are not controlling your glucose properly, go for it. Making sure you go right treatment and then making sure that you get when you need insulin, just go for it. Don't think you're another drug doctor. I want an injection. I don't want it. Don't please tell that, because the only person who opened the gate for the glucose to enter is insulin. And if you don't have enough insulin from your pancreas, none of the drugs going to work. It's the insulin. So the message is that whatever the way, making sure blood glucose is controlled. Think about the diet, what you are eating. Go for the dietitian, making sure culturally sensitive, but the right food. Get the right food. And making sure you lose weight and attain a BMI of 20 to 25. And there are ways to lose weight. There are diabetic drugs in the market which helps to lose weight. And when you have a kidney problem, we tend to use these drugs with a very low threshold. So yes, you have to be careful about the diet, but we can also help to actually give drugs to lose weight. So glucose control, weight control, and the next is the blood pressure. Make sure you attain the GP practice or the hospital or wherever and check the blood pressure and very carefully control it. Because just don't take blood pressure seriously. Don't take lightly. Blood pressure. Pressure means pressure on your very blood vessel, the tube which is taking the blood from your heart to the rest of the organ. It is under pressure, under tension. It's going to, if you are not treating it properly, it's going to bump on it and it's going to cause more pores. It's going to leak. So make sure the blood pressure is taken seriously. Actually, blood pressure, to be honest, more important than blood sugar in some respect. So blood pressure seriously, blood sugar seriously, obesity seriously, and maybe sort of low salt. If you're eating a lot of salt, that will help in some respect to get your blood pressure down. So think about low salt. And also, the other thing, reason I'm telling you that, because if you can't diagnose that microalbumin, there are another 2 drugs can help you to delay the progression to delay the kidneys going worse. So these 2 drugs, again, the people who are diabetic might know, but we call ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors. ACE and the other one called SGLT2 inhibitors, which is sodium glucose transport inhibitors. Again, if you're a diabetic, you probably know this drug. If you're not diabetic, the point I'm trying to make, if you're a carer looking after your parents or someone, just think, by identifying or by screening procedure, identifying, you can actually have these two drugs which can delay the chance of going into renal failure. And also I mentioned that kidney disease is not about getting worse and going to the kidney disease, but actually during that process heart get affected. When the heart get affected, they have a higher chance to get heart failure and coronary disease and heart attack and strokes. So it's not about actually you are going to prevent getting kidney failure, preventing dialysis or transplant. You actually preventing yourself getting heart attacks and also strokes. So it's very important to consider that, and because of that reason we are very intensively manage heart as well. We give a cholesterol lowering treatment. We check your cholesterol seriously and making sure the cholesterol is controlled meticulously. So that's another thing which we always look into that. So these are the measures. The point I'm trying to make, that at least your kidney is giving another 10 years years for you to do something about now, and by doing that, your chance of going into the real renal failure, which I talked before, the acidosis, the fluid retention, the anemia, the uremia, and feeling tired, feeling weak, that could be stopped. So hopefully you don't need to go to the dialysis or renal transplant or even die. So these are the important factors we have to think.
Thank you, Dr. Yalini. What I'm hearing from you is, even after getting diabetes, think prevention is better than intervention, isn't it? At least,
absolutely. So it is actually every stage. If you miss your opportunity, every stage you can do something to actually improve your quality of life. All what we need is don't want to get the renal failure. I'm sure you must be having some friends and families, and I'm sure the quality of life they had. So I don't need to tell you. I'm sure that almost all the audience who are here would actually face these sort of problems and face these sort of patients in your life.
thank you, Dr. Yalini. Are there any symptoms that should raise red flags of renal problems?
Yeah, it is sort of it's like diabetes. We know that in the early part of the diabetes, there's no symptoms. Yeah, so the polyuria or excess urination, excess thirst, and all sort of symptoms happen when the blood sugars were high. But now we talked about diagnosing diabetes when they're asymptomatic, when they don't have any symptoms. It's like screening. So likewise, kidney disease in the early, there's no symptoms. So they don't get the real bad symptom which I'm talking about when the kidney fails. But when the kidney initially, the CKD or chronic kidney disease is a bit of a 10-year sort of a disease. So initially, you don't have any symptoms at all. And that's why I'm reiterating the importance of actually screening. Screening with a blood test which detect the filtration, what we call glomerular filtration rate, the filtration, and also screening with the urine to detect the microalbumin. So these are the two early markers will tell us there is something going wrong. Act upon now. Even you have missed all these two opportunities before, this is an opportunity for you to stop going into end-stage renal failure.
Thank you, Dr. Yalini. As you know, unfortunately, some of us or some of the audience might have already got to that stage, or their families, or they must be carers. How can one manage once you get it? How can they manage, and what are the treatments available for renal failure?
Yeah. So when someone coming into the process of the diabetes journey leading to kidney, the important thing is the lifestyle. Even still, at this stage, when you have microalbumin, when you have glomerular filtration going down, you could do a lot of lifestyle measures. The lifestyle measures are diet. Again, it's a big topic. I personally would say every diabetic patient should have some awareness carbohydrate. what we are eating, how much we are eating. I'm not sure any of you know this book. It's called Carbs and Cows. This is it's a book which is quite a useful book. Understand that if I'm eating, 2 string hoppers, how much carbohydrate it has, because sometimes we don't understand, and then we overeat. And again, we should understand how much carbohydrate we can have a day. Yeah, and then based on that, you can actually have a food plan. So have a food plan, and then change your diet in such a way that you can lose weight and you can control the diabetes well. That's one. Making sure you have diet as well as the drugs. You can influence your GPs or hospital practitioners. Can you give me a drug to lose weight? Because now losing weight is independently going to improve your kidney function, irrespective of improving diabetes. And most of you will know when you lose weight, diabetes get better. But irrespective of the diabetes, the losing weight can also help with going into kidney failure. So diet is such an important, it's a topic itself, so I'm not going to go through that, but understand what you are eating, which is called carbohydrate awareness. Yeah, that's one. And exercise, we knew that from the first time. I'm talking about insulin resistant. I did mention that the insulin becomes stronger when you have exercise. So make sure you go to exercise at least 5 times a week. That's the national guideline. And you do 30 minutes, not just jogging, but again, until your heart rate goes up. And also at least 2 times a week, resistant exercises, which is particularly improving skeletal muscle, improve insulin resistance, improve it makes the insulin stronger. So diet, exercise, losing weight, and less salt. Make sure that you eat less salt. In case sadly you are smoking, please stop now. Please stop now, because you've gone through this. So make sure that you care your family or members who are in case smoking. Smoking is going to make heart and kidneys is worse. So stop smoking, low salt, good diet, exercise, and weight control. These have to think. And then good glucose control. As I mentioned, diabetes is a journey. In the initial stage, the pancreas is compensating and trying to do its best, but it couldn't produce the amount of insulin the body needs. So you are giving medication to squeeze the insulin from the pancreas. So you are giving medication. So initially, the medication does work because there is reasonable insulin. You can squeeze it out. And then as the disease progresses, there wasn't enough insulin. So the drugs which are working before is not going to work. No matter how much you squeeze, there's nothing going to come because there's no insulin. And that's the stage you might think, you need insulin. And I have to say, our patients, particularly Southeast Asians, when it comes to insulin, no injection, another drug. There is no drug will open the gate. Only insulin will open the gate. All what we could do, help to squeeze the insulin from the pancreas, or we have other drugs which make insulin to work better, so make it a bit stronger. I mentioned that losing weight itself can help, exercise can help, and metformin, I'm sure you heard about, that is a drug which actually makes your insulin stronger. And there's another drug called pioglitazone. So sometimes we use them, it's not used that often now. So there are drugs which make the insulin to work better. So make sure you take the drugs. If you are missing out drug, this is the time, be compliant with the drug. And if the doctor is saying insulin, please do that. And again, as I mentioned before, we actually now fortunate in this this decade, we got some good drugs which actually help the kidneys. Like the pancreas, kidneys also get a bit high pressure. And then when the high pressure, it tends to fail easily. So 2 drugs in the market now will actually reduce the pressure of the kidney. The glomerular filtration pressure is reduced. And as everyone, we know that when the pressure is up, we go mad. Because someone can take some pressure, someone takes some work from you, we are happy. So likewise, this glomeruli, which is under a lot of pressure, that pressure is reduced by using these 2 drugs. One is, which I mentioned before, ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, which reduces the pressure from the glomeruli which is going out, and also SGLT2 inhibitors, which reduces the pressure which coming in is constrict. Anyway, I don't want to go to the detail because we are talking to the public now. But the point is, there's 2 drugs available now which can reduce the workload of the kidney, thereby reduce the progression to kidney failure. So lifestyle, And again, blood pressure is another very important to control. You cannot ignore the importance of blood pressure at this point. So make sure you're on the right diabetic drug, right blood pressure drug, and cholesterol. And when kidney goes off, heart goes off too. So heart is need to be protected now, because what the people die is, before they get kidney failure, before they go into dialysis, they die of heart disease. Now it's important to protect the heart. So make sure you actually have a cholesterol treatment as well. Some people go for aspirin too, but the doctors will decide. So lifestyle, good diabetic control, good blood pressure control, and cholesterol control, and taking these two drugs which I was mentioning you, which reduces the workload of kidney. By doing that, you can actually reduce the chances of the early kidney disease progressing into late kidney disease.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. We have all learned a lot. The best thing, you have made it very simplistic for everyone to understand. So thank you so much for that. You have shared a lot of valuable information today with our audience about diabetes and kidney failure, and how we can prevent, how we can manage, and now how we can treat. Can you share 5 takeaways for our audience, what they must remember when they leave this call today?
Yeah, I would say that. I know we've got some time, so I could just a bit elaborate on prevention of diabetes. The first thing to do is to try whether you can prevent diabetes, yeah, and then of course you can prevent kidney failure, isn't it? So that's what tip on how to prevent. You can actually go for screening test. If you're in Southeast Asian, you can ask your GP to do an HbA1c, which is a diabetic checkup. So one, go for screening test to stop getting diabetes. 2, when you have diabetes, make sure it is properly controlled. The blood sugars were properly controlled. The 2. So when you have diabetes, always go for a yearly checkup to see early kidney damage, which I mentioned. Blood test for glomerular filtration and urine test for microalbumin. So that one. And then make sure at this point at least you think you had a red alert. You're going into red alert. Yeah. And then make sure everything you do from now correct, so you won't die. To be honest, for me, I'll tell you, 45,000 premature death in UK with CKD. It is, my neighbor, who was a next door neighbor when I was living in my previous house, he went to the toilet. He never came back. He had a heart attack. He had touch of diabetes, but he was on metformin. He had a touch of kidney disease. That's what the wife says. So if patients die of heart disease when they have touch of kidney disease, so just please don't ignore that. You can die, and then make sure that you are yearly followed up properly, and this albuminuria and the blood pressure and the blood glucose and all those things are monitored, and then they were getting better, and hopefully with these measures will actually help you not to develop kidney failure and kidney disease. And I'm sure you will be thinking about one of your family members or someone who had kidney disease, and you might be wondering, you wish you know this information at that point, but we are in a better stage now to understand kidney disease and make measures to prevent that. So that will be my take home message: good blood pressure control, good glucose control, good cholesterol control, weight control, stop smoking, and measure them every year. Make sure you measure your microalbumin and glomerular filtration rate.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. A lot of takeaways for all of us. So thank you so much. One last question. What is your view on the talk show and your experience of it, please?
I think it's quite a fascinating concept, this talk show, because as a consultant, I have sort of more dealing with GPs. So I educate them, empower them, but it's nothing like actually seeing patients and then giving that information to the patients on the first hand. It is a real privilege. The patient, this is essentially, I believe that is a general public and the patients and the carers, and giving the information in the right time, and hopefully will actually make a major impact in the outcome. As I mentioned before, a kidney dialysis costs NHS around 18,000 per year. So one patient going into dialysis, 18,000 per year. How much is the cost? In NHS, we spend around 1.5 billion. In chronic kidney disease, half of them is dialysis. So it is a costly thing. Leave about the financial cost, the human cost. A patient who is 65 years had an early kidney disease. Within the 10 years, before they develop into renal failure, they die of heart disease. The likelihood of the 65-year-old man dying is much higher than ending up with renal failure. So it is a premature death. As I mentioned before, 45,000 premature death happens in CKD patient every year. So it is a privilege, just to reduce the NHS costs. We are suffering with the current NHS and current issues. I'm sure you know all about what's happening in the political side, and also, most important, the humans suffering. And patients who are on dialysis and patients who are actually not going into dialysis, and then some of them are managed conservatively, the carers suffer probably more than the patient. And this is another thing. So it's actually not about patient, the carers. So we got to think that when we have a problem, it's not about us, it's about the people who are around us who's going to suffer. So I think in that way, it's a great opportunity for me to pass this wonderful, the important information to the right people to get the benefit. And this is a very good platform to do that. So I'm very grateful you invited me for this.
It's a pleasure to have you, Dr. Ali, and a privilege. Thank you so much. Please hold on before we ask the question. A couple of announcements. Next week, we are not going to have a show to support Scott, the chairman, and Dr. Narendra here listening. So we are all supporting them because a lot of our audience will be either be there or they are running the show. So because of that. The second thing is this month, October, is for breast cancer awareness month. In line with that, we are going to be talking about in our episode 107, breast cancer awareness with Dr. Nalini Jaharathan. Okay. Dr. Nalini is a medical oncology specialist registrar at the Royal Marsden Hospital. She studied medicine at Imperial College London and undertook her Bachelor of Science degree in Japan. She recently completed her MD research degree at University College London. During this time, she has developed a large international cancer clinical trial looking at the use of aspirin in early stage cancer. She has numerous papers published on subjects of cancer in a number of cancer journals, as well as presenting cancer research at numerous international conferences. So she has furthermore developed national guidelines for patients with cancer and diabetes. So we are really looking forward to talk about another important topic yet on the 30th of October. Now over to Kirbeko for the vote of thanks.
Hello, everyone. Apologies again for the sound trouble, but nevertheless, we are here. The show must go on. With that, I would like to thank all the people who come on Facebook week after week. I'd like to thank you for your support and your continuous cheering us on for Meet Menaca Celebrating You. And we also like to thank all the participants who every week come on the show on Zoom to support and cheer us on. Last but not least, Dr. Yalini, our apologies for all the sound trouble again, but you know what? You did a very good presentation. Me being personally a novice, got myself thinking I've got to stop eating a lot of kuttu and rice. But you know what? It's all a time of adjusting, and managing your diabetes is not a science, it says. It is an art of adaptation. Art of eating right, art of exercising, the total art of well-being is what you have so clearly spoke to us, shared with us, such passion. And we thank you, Dr. Yalini, once again from Meet Menaca Celebrating You. We celebrate you and for all the work that you do at BARTS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hirve. Huge thank you, Dr. Yalini, once again for such an amazing episode and sharing such important information. And once again, thank you so much for each and every one of you on the platform today listening and supporting us getting to this 106th episode. Really appreciate that. And thank you for everyone who is listening to us on Facebook and supporting us there as well. Please do support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, Meet Menaca, so that we can spread this information far and wide. And do come in and join us on the 3rd of December this year to celebrate and also recognize some change makers, and most importantly, connecting in person with a lot of you we haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet. So thank you so much for all the support. For people who are on the Facebook listening to us, until we see you on the 30th of October, same time, same place, speaking about breast cancer awareness. Stay safe, be happy, and keep smiling.